Aron Ra, such an honor to have you back on our live program. And how are you today?
I didn't hear everything. I was just plugging my headphones in.
Oh, okay. So you can hear me now, right?
Yes.
All right. It's awesome. So really, really great to have you back on our show, and such an honor. And if I remember correctly, last time you gave us a speech on evolution, and that was really, we were inspired and actually learned a lot from your last presentation. So now this
Thank
time
you.
we have several people, several experts on evolution on this stage right now. So one is Amit. He's a scientist,
Okay.
and we have several other people from our platform. So once again, Arundra, welcome and thanks a lot for joining. We'll start with you. What is going on? What is new since we saw you last time? Anything happening?
Well, let me see. Next month or a month from now, roughly, I will be in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for American Atheist National Convention. And a week or so ago, I was in the Caribbean because I was doing there was a Caribbean cruise. It was a free thought cruise. And so there were like 80, 90 people that had signed up for this thing and they wanted me to give a presentation there. And I don't know why, but I thought that discussing death uh, would be a good topic. And the speech was well received. I was surprised.
All right. So any arguments? What is the best argument you have heard over the few?
Here's my problem. It's not that there's a better argument or a worse argument. They're all bad. They're just all across the board bad. And the problem is that believers do not care what the truth is. They don't care. You can put them in a time machine, send it back in
Uh,
time. They will never admit the reality. Doesn't matter. They want to make believe something else. They have a fantasy world they want to believe in, and they're going to believe in that. And they will deny reality. They will deny that reality exists. Descartes did that. At first he says, I think, therefore I am. But then later in the same book, he says that he can't be sure about his own existence. The only thing he can be sure of is that God exists, and that his own existence is somehow less necessary. I wish I could remember the way that he phrased it, but people will tell me that atoms are not real, that the entirety of reality is just an illusion, that we don't exist, that we're figments of God's imagination. Every kind of fallacy and fantasy is employed. It's reality denial, and that's the frustrating thing. How do you reach people who have secured themselves that they don't want to be reached? And it has nothing to do with what the truth is. It's not like they're ever going to say, "Oh, I was wrong about that. I should correct that." No, that's never going to happen. Creationism and other forms of religious extremism are just a fundamental dishonesty.
right. I've heard a quote from you that to preach religion as if it's the truth is the most dishonest position. Something like that. You said right in
Yeah,
along those lines.
faith is the most dishonest position it is possible to
Right.
have, and the only way to make it more dishonest is to become an apologist.
Uh-huh. And to preach to others. Okay, Dr. Amit,
Yeah,
do you
sure.
have a question?
Yes, I have, but before that, I will give you a trivia about Aron Ra. Okay, so what happened around a long time ago, Aron Ra gave a challenge to everyone that if they want, they can come to Aron Ra, and he will make you believe, make you understand to the core of the evolution. Okay, to your complete satisfaction. No
Yeah.
one took that challenge. Only one person took that challenge, and that person accepted that after at the end of that conversation, accepted that, and that person is Aaron Ra's wife, isn't it, Aaron?
Y- Yep. Yep. That is correct. the only
And that
person
is
to ever, the only person to ever accept that challenge and then get through the process. There have been a handful of people that accepted the challenge initially and then bailed as soon as they realized I could actually do it.
Exactly. I
And
definitely understand that. You can
and it's on the first premise, by the way, too. It's like the argument always ends on here's what the definition of evolution is. This is the way they're actually teaching it. It's descent with inherent modification. It's variation in allele frequencies, whatever, in reproductive populations over time. It is not one kind of thing changing into another fundamentally different kind of thing. Yeah, and they will not correct that's where it stops. Step one, they will not correct any error. It's maddeningly dishonest.
And one of the things that is even more ridiculous for me is that when someone says that I believe in microevolution, but not in macroevolution. So whenever I have encountered these kind of people, so whenever I ask them, could you please define what do you mean by microevolution and macroevolution, they give me the example or the definition of the speciation, biological speciation concept. They give me that definition. But when I start asking them questions that, okay, so you believe that this guy, this Adam and Eve or someone like that was there. So from that, the total human race has came across like 8 billion almost people, and among them there is so there is a different races. When did this race exactly come from? Is it what? How do you define? They just ignore. And even when we give example of this laboratory de novo evolution of it has been published in Nature also. So de novo evolution of multicellularity from the single cellularity, they also deny the fact that it can happen. It is proven thing. They deny that. They also don't understand that macroevolution, when we mean this speciation and all those things, it is a continuum. They don't understand that. This is really ridiculous, and I have seen you struggling to make people understand that, and this is really funny. I want to give you one example, Aron. So just wanted to discuss with you. Have you gone through that book, that Evidence of Evolution?
Which book? Who wrote it?
So this one. So I was watching a debate with you, with Sabur Ahmed and you. Okay. So this guy was giving. So this guy was talking about Darwinian evolution in a probabilistic framework, where in this book it has been written that this common ancestry has been is under a, so he was quoting a line from there, quoting one sentence over there. If you remember, I don't know if you remember that or not. So he was saying that in this book it has been mentioned that this common ancestry is in a probabilistic view, whereas you were discussing that Darwinian evolution is actually a fact. Actually, that book, it was misrepresented. What this book was trying to say is that common ancestry and separate ancestry, these are, if we talk only about the morphology, then it is in a probabilistic framework. There is no must or there is no fact in that both can be equally likely. Why? Because they are also explaining that because these traits under different selection pressures can evolve independently, and what we have seen. So that's why, so in that letter of that chapter, they're explaining that genes, genetic, when we go into the genes and we check the genetic codes, different type of genetic codes like the essential genes or the garbage, the junk genes and all, how this probability we can confirm. So they are explaining it pretty well. And when it has been represented to you, it was completely misrepresented. Misrepresented. And even though
Sabur
yes,
Ahmad is grotesquely dishonest, and I know I've said that about all the creationists, but it's true of all the creationists. And in the case of Sabur, his entire debate with me was based on a straw man, a deliberate misrepresentation of what the definition of evolution is. He tried to redefine microevolution as evolution, that all evolution is just microevolution. And then he wanted to say that macroevolution was Darwinism. And so that was the first part. But then there was also the misrepresentation that you're talking about, where he was misquoting other people. And then there was he mentioned the professor that he was quoting from, and two of his students happened to be in the debate audience. And so in the break before the Q&A, these two people came up to me and they said, "That is not what he said. This is what he said." And Sabur did an out of context quote mine, which of course is what they all do. They will read the entire thing. They know exactly what it's saying, and they'll take just this one sentence by itself, because then it looks like he said something else.
Yes, exactly. And it was completely misrepresentation. So it was in this book. It definitely this is a pretty good book. If you wish, you can go through that book, Evidence of Evolution. So if you wish, I can send you the PDF copy as well. So this one I can show you also. I can I'm not very sure if it is allowed to share my screen and show it. I can show you. So these are very much misrepresentation about the definition, the concept of evolution, and definitely so so now, for example. So when someone says that if I have one skull and I'm not being able to define or distinguish it or categorize it if it is an ape or a human, definitely why it is because there is a gradualism. So that's why it is not even not being able to define it properly. And but it actually goes for like it is actually the evolution what it says, but they think that is it is goes against evolution, and whenever you try to make them understand, they don't understand it, and that is
That, and
really fun.
when they demand evidence, when they say, "Oh, if you want to prove evolution, then show me this," right? Whatever they ask to see, if you could provide that, that would disprove evolution. They don't want to see anything that would actually support evolution. So they do just as you say. They see things that support evolution and say it contradicts evolution. They come up with a straw man of what evolution is supposed to be, what they think it's supposed to be, which is the opposite of what it is. They don't see it as populations, as emergent patterns and populations over reproductive, over time or generations or whatever. They want an individual to do the entire change in that one individual's lifetime by itself, from fish to rabbit in one lifetime, one individual.
Exactly, and that is impossible, right? And when someone says that if can a storm just pass through and make a junkyard convert it into a Boeing, evolution never claimed that, right? We never claimed that. We say it is descent with modification and natural selection. When you say about the storm, so where is natural selection? Where is the descent with modification gone? It is not a natural. It is, and even when someone says that 13 pages of a book, when you find it, okay, yes, definitely Shakespeare's 13 books, 13 pages. If you give me, I cannot find it. But what if it is a Fibonacci series? If you give me two numbers from there, I can find the whole series, right? I just need two numbers because there is a pattern. And evolution actually says that the genetic, whatever it is, if you talk about the genetic drift or the gene flow or natural descent with modification and natural selection, we know the pattern and we can figure out. And it is also not that when we talk about the gene, there's genetic clock. It is not that we do not correct our understanding with different fossil findings. We definitely fine tune it every day. We are doing it, right? So definitely it is that. So I have one question I would like to know. So rather two questions. So one is that when we do a phylogenetic tree, so we use some statistical parameters. So I would like to get some clarity from you, like when we do it, if you can explain that process to me a little
What
bit.
did you say
I know you.
before? What did you say before parameters?
Okay, the phylogenetic tree. The
Uh-huh.
phylogenetic tree. I would like to understand when suppose I have one. I have unknown. Have an unknown sample. I just found it, and we want to put it in the phylogenetic tree.
Okay.
How do we do it? I know that you have a big database and you have worked on that, and over there, so we use some statistical analysis for that. So my question is, what are the parameters? What are the parameters we think about, and so how do we do it? So what are this? Why we use statistics in that? That is one question I would like to know in little detail. And if you can give me some readings also, that will be really great for me. And my second
Well,
question is, is that if the Krebs cycle, how it has been evolved, the Krebs cycles. I was actually trying to find some scientific literature on that. I could not find much work on that. If you can guide me how to study, it will be really good for me.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to answer off the top of my head.
Okay, sure. That is absolutely fine.
About
the Krebs cycle, I definitely understand.
Yeah, because that's like real-time biology and has very little to do with paleontology. But on the other one, there's it depends on how much of the fossil you have.
Aron sir, just give me 1 second. Sorry for interruption. সত্যসন্ধানী একটুখানি ওনার স্ক্রিনটা বড় করে দিন না। ওনার স্ক্রিনটা উনি তো ক্যামেরা অন করে রেখেছেন। ওনার লেআউট, could you please change the layout and increase the screen? Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, sir. So extremely sorry. না ওনার লেআউটটা আমাদেরগুলো পাশে থাক, ওনারটা বড় করা থাক। লেআউটটা দেখুন, ওইখানে একটা লেআউট আছে। দেখুন থার্ড বা ফোর্থ লেআউটটা ওরকম আছে যে আমাদের এই ইয়েগুলো থাম্বনেল হিসেবে ওনারটা বড় হিসেবে থাক।
হ্যাঁ, আমি ওটা করে দিচ্ছি। হ্যাঁ, শিওর।
হ্যাঁ, ওইটা করে দিন। হ্যাঁ, ঠিক এইরকমই থাকবে, কিন্তু ওনারটা এখানে থাকবে। ঠিক আছে? ঠিক আছে। Aron Ra sir, extremely sorry for the interruption. Please go ahead. Extremely sorry. Sincere apologies, sir. Please
okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Okay. So the first thing is it depends on how much of the fossil you have. You have to be able to identify what you've got. And I found, for example, I found something I was very excited about. I found a partial skull, or a skull fragment, from a Permian therapsid in South Africa. And I was able to, I had enough of it that I could see the pineal foramen, but there wasn't enough to identify anything else, sadly. I could tell that it was a skull fragment, but without teeth, that was going to be necessary in order to link it to anything else. I could tell that it was, that it's almost certainly a therapsid because of the foramen, but there wasn't anything else to be indicative. So it depends on how much you have. If you have teeth, if you have something diagnostic, if you have recognizable things like a femur or something like that, then you can often match it to other things. The people that were on the team with me were able to look at the femur of oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of the fucking, it's like Scutosaurus, but it wasn't Scutosaurus because that's Russian. What is it? I can't remember the species name, but anyway, it's an anapsid. A late Permian anapsid, and the thing is, they could look at the femur and recognize that this is what it was because it's the shape and everything is peculiar to that class. So they're able to, but they can't give a species diagnosis for it, but they're able to say, okay, well, these traits are all consistent with this. And there are so many subtleties here that yes, they use statistical analysis, whether it's Bayesian or what was the other one? Maximum parsimony. But there are so many subtleties to look at. Like look what when they came up with Apatosaurus, for example, they didn't have a head for this magnificent fossil, so they created, or they borrowed a head from Camarasaurus and attached it to the body so they could do a nice museum display. But this what they had created was then called Brontosaurus, and then they realized, well, you've got the body of an Apatosaurus and you've got the head of Camarasaurus, but this is not a Brontosaurus. This is a composite. Well, then later, like a century later, actually just a few years ago, they come up with another fossil of what they were originally calling Apatosaurus, and they noticed that it had enough distinctions in it that it matches the original fossil, but is more distinct from other Apatosaurus fossils. And so they reclassified it because of all of these different coordinates, many different features of data, little subtlety things. Then they identified that this is, they said, okay, the original animal that they called Brontosaurus, that they decided wasn't a Brontosaurus, that's Brontosaurus because that's the name they gave it first. And then later they come up with Apatosaurus, but all of these others match each other, and this one is distinct. So this one is a Brontosaurus. So Brontosaurus been revived from nothing, right? They misdiagnosed the wrong, or they thought they did. They thought that the Apatosaurus and the Brontosaurus were the same thing. All these little structural statistics, they show all of these other ones that were found, they're the same thing. This one's different. This is Brontosaurus. I don't know another way to explain it. I mean, because there's so many, all life is in flux. Everything is moving in subtle degrees.
let's segue a little bit.
Uh-huh.
So you are, apart from being an advocate of scientific literacy, you are also a member of the Democratic Party of Texas, right?
Well, I had to. If you want to vote in the primaries in Texas, you have to vote as one of the main parties. There's a law
Okay.
here. You can't vote unless you're either Republican or Democrat.
So
although I don't personally feel like a Democrat, I had to register as a Democrat because it's down to two parties. Everybody else, they're the ones with special privilege. Nobody else gets in.
But what are you running for office or something, like becoming
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, in order to run and have any realistic chance of being taken seriously, you have to run as a Democrat or a Republican. If you run Green Party or anything else, Constitution Party or whatever, again, those independent parties aren't allowed in. It's special privilege rules.
Okay, so I will allow people in the audience. So there are a few people who want to ask you a question. So here's Maulana Shiraji. He's Mufti Maulana Shiraji, and he's a Muslim, and he has a question for you. So go ahead, Shiraji.
আমাকে কি শোনা যাচ্ছে?
হ্যাঁ, শোনা যাচ্ছে, বলেন।
বাংলাতে কোশ্চেনটা করতে চাচ্ছিলাম, আশা করি আপনারা সেটা ইংরেজিতে বলে দিও।
হ্যাঁ, আমি I will translate everything for Aron so he can address it. Yep.
আমার একটা কোশ্চেন যেটা আমি অনেকদিন হলোই উত্তরটা ছিলাম এবং যে বিষয়টার উপরে আমি অনেক চেষ্টা করেছি জানার জন্য এবং যে বিষয়টা আমার খুবই জানার আগ্রহ বটে, সেটি হচ্ছে যে আমরা দেখি যে নাস্তিকরা তাদের চিন্তা চেতনার ব্যাপক স্বাধীনতার কথা বলে এবং তাদের যে সীমাবদ্ধতাকে তারা খুবই ব্যাপকভাবে তারা খণ্ডন করে এবং সীমাবদ্ধতাকে তারা কোনোভাবে অ্যাকসেপ্ট করতে চায় না, যেটা আর কি ধর্ম বিভিন্ন ধরনের সীমাবদ্ধতার কথা বলে। তো সেক্ষেত্রে একটা কোশ্চেন হচ্ছে যে যেহেতু মানুষ তার চিন্তা এবং হচ্ছে আপনার কাজের ক্ষেত্রে ব্যাপক পরিমাণে স্বাধীনতার কথা বলা হইতেছে, তো এই জায়গা থেকে কোশ্চেনটা হচ্ছে যে প্রতিটি নাস্তিক যদি তার চিন্তার ব্যাপক স্বাধীনতার জায়গা থেকে এমন কিছু চিন্তা করে যেটা একজন নাস্তিক এবং আরেকজন নাস্তিকের ভিতরে কন্ট্রাডিকশন করে, অর্থাৎ নৈতিকতার প্রশ্নে যে একটা বিষয়কে নৈতিক নাকি অনৈতিক সেই জায়গা থেকে, যেহেতু সবাই তার চিন্তার ক্ষেত্রে ব্যাপক পরিমাণে তারা স্বাধীনতা বিষয়ে আসে, সেক্ষেত্রে প্রশ্নটা হচ্ছে যে দুইজন ব্যক্তি যদি
প্রশ্ন অনেক লম্বা হয়ে গেছে, এত কিছু তো ভাই মনে থাকবে না। জাস্ট মরালিটি কোশ্চেনে আমি জিজ্ঞেস করতে,
মানে প্রশ্নটাকে বোঝার জন্য আর কি।
হ্যাঁ, আমি মরালিটি নিয়ে প্রশ্ন করতে ভাই, আমি একটু বুঝাই আপনাকে বলি যে আপনি যদি মরালিটি নিয়ে প্রশ্ন করতে চান যে মরালিটি কি হবে, দুইজন কনফ্লিক্টিং আইডিয়া নিয়ে থাকতে পারে, এটা জিজ্ঞেস করতে পারি। এবং প্রতিটা নাস্তিক, আপনাকে বুঝতে হবে যে প্রতিটা নাস্তিক কি করবে এটা তো নাস্তিকরা ডিসাইড করে দেয় না, এটা তারা নিজেরা ডিসাইড করে, তাই না? সেটা আমাদের
আপনি একটা কাজ করুন, শুনুন, আপনি একটা কাজ করুন, আপনি প্রশ্নটা করে দিন, ঠিক আছে? যদি এক্সপ্লেনেশন আমাদের লাগে আপনি প্রশ্নটা করুন, এক দু লাইনে আপনি প্রশ্নটা করুন। যদি এক্সপ্লেনেশন লাগে, আমরা কেন করেছেন কনটেক্সট যদি আমরা বুঝতেছি, আমরা
সেটা,
কেমন? নইলে এত কথা তো মনে থাকবে না।
হ্যাঁ, সো আরন,
আমার প্রশ্নটা একটাই, কিন্তু বাকি কথাটাকে আমি একটু মানে উপস্থাপন করছি যাতে করে
আপনি প্রশ্নটা একবার করে নিন। আপনি প্রশ্নটা পুরো সম্পূর্ণরূপে ফ্রেম করে, একদম সঠিকভাবে ফ্রেম করে আপনি প্রশ্নটা একবার করে নিন, যাতে আমরা
জি সেটা বলতেছি। সেটা হচ্ছে যে দুটা সাবজেক্টিভ মোরালিটিতে যদি কন্ট্রাডিকশন করে, সেক্ষেত্রে আপনার হচ্ছে আমি প্রথমেই বলে নিচ্ছি, সেটা হচ্ছে কন্ট্রাডিকশন হতে হবে। কন্ট্রাডিকশন ছাড়া যদি হয় সেটা নিয়ে আমাদের কোনো প্রশ্ন নাই।
এখন দেখেন দুইজন ভাই দেখেন, কোয়েশ্চেনটা আমি বলতেছি, দুইজন মানুষের মধ্যে কন্ট্রাডিকশন থাকতেই পারে। এখন এখানে তো আমরা এমন না যে আমরা আমি
সেক্ষেত্রে নৈতিকতার অবস্থানটা কিভাবে নির্দিষ্ট হবে?
যে যেটা মনে করবে সে সেটা করবে। আমার কাছে যেটা নৈতিক মনে হবে আমি ওইটা করবো। ভাই কনফ্লিক্ট যদি হয়, কন্ট্রাডিকশন যদি হয়, সেখানে তো দুই হবে, সেখানে তো কিছু করার নাই।
But
আপনার
Sottar
কোশ্চেনটা
bhai,
কি ভাই?
Sottar bhai,
হ্যাঁ
Sottar bhai, perhaps morality is not subjective, I think.
রাইট না এখন আমি ওনাকে কোয়েশ্চেন করতেছি আপনি তাহলে শুনেন মুফতি ইয়া সো কোয়েশ্চেন Aron Ra, this is the question. He wants to know that if there is conflicting ideas between two atheists, and they both differ on a moral question, how is it going to be solved? So that's basically what he wants to know.
They differ on a moral
And
question.
Right.
another supplementary question, Mr. Aron Ra, is morality subjective or objective or both?
I take the position that everybody knows, everybody, every society, everyone, everywhere throughout time understands that you shouldn't just go kick a sleeping puppy, that you shouldn't go abuse some little old lady out at the bus stop, because it is immoral or wrong to cause unnecessary harm or suffering. That's just it. It's many religions have claimed that it's the golden rule. And more popularly, I think, or more succinctly, it can be described as don't be a dick. But we all understand that, everybody. So the difference between secular morality and religious morality is that we have morality and the religions don't. So what you have with religion is you have subjective morality. You have the opinion of whoever is pretending to speak for God. And even if there was a God, if you have to ask God, is this moral or not, and then God has to say yes or no, then that's still subjective. We need a reason why something is moral or not. If you have the reason why, then we can all evaluate. Is this thing moral? Well, no, because it doesn't fit this, or because it violates that. We have the reasons. We have the understanding. If you have the reason why, then you have an objective morality. Now you can check with other people, which is what objectivity means. It's not down to your own personal intuitions or what have you. You can confirm with other people, I think this is wrong because, and then other people can say, well, yes, because these are the rules. This is the standard. This is what makes something moral or not. Are you causing unnecessary harm or suffering or what have you? Now, there's some philosophical position, like Kant, for example, who bases their morality on something else. But even Kant understands that you don't walk up and kick the sleeping puppy or beat up the little old lady at the bus stop. Everybody knows. And the reason for that, you might want to explain that, and then I can give the reason for that after we see his response.
ওকে তো মুফতি ভাই আপনি কি বুঝতে পারছেন ওনার রেসপন্সটা, যে আমাদের মোরালিটি যেটা সেটা কোনো একটা যুক্তির উপর নির্ভরশীল, বা কোনো একটা আমরা যে কারণে কোনো জিনিস ভালো বলতেছি বা খারাপ বলতেছি ওই যুক্তির উপরে নির্ভরশীল। এবং এথিস্টদের বা নাস্তিকদের এবং ধার্মিকদের মধ্যে পার্থক্য হচ্ছে যে আমাদের রিজন আছে, আপনাদের রিজন নাই। মানে আমাদেরটা অ্যাকচুয়ালি মোরাল, আপনাদেরটা হচ্ছে আল্লাহ কি বলছে সেটা। তো এখন যদি রিজন থাকে তাহলে তো আমার আল্লাহর ওই দরকার নাই যে আল্লাহ কি বলছে বা কোন জায়গায় কি বলছে, ঠিক আছে? ওই রিজনটাই আমরা দেখাবো যে এটা। আর আরেকজন যদি অন্য কোনো রিজন দেখাইতে পারে এবং ওটা যদি জাস্টিফাইড হয় তাহলে আমরা ওইটাকেই মেনে নিব যে এইটা হচ্ছে যে রিজন। এখন এইটা হলো আপনার অবজেক্টিভলি, হ্যাঁ, যেহেতু ওই রিজনটা অবজেক্টিভ, সুতরাং এই মরালিটিটা অবজেক্টিভ, আমরা অন্য মানুষের সাথে চেক করতে পারি যে তারাও অ্যাগ্রি করে কিনা ওই সেম রিজনে। এটাই উনি বলছেন। এখন এরপরে উনি আরো বলবে আপনার এটার উপরে আপনার কি বলার আছে, তারপরে উনি বলবে।
আচ্ছা, আমার এখানে কোশ্চেনটা হচ্ছে যে আপনি বলতেছেন যে আমাদের কাছে রিজন বা কারণটা হচ্ছে মেইন।
কারণটা হলো অবজেক্টিভ,
যে কারণটা হচ্ছে মেইন, কি কারণে হইতেছে যে এই জিনিসটা মোরাল কিংবা এই জিনিসটা মানে মোরাল না। এখন কথাটা হচ্ছে যে কারণটা যে সঠিক এটা কে নির্ধারণ করবে এবং তাকে কেন সবাই বিশ্বাস করবে।
আচ্ছা, so his question is who decides whether or not the reason is correct, and why would somebody believe that person who says this is correct?
I suspected that that's what he was going to do, because believers rely on authority. That's all they know. They don't understand reason works separate from, independent of authority. It's not who decides. I just answered that question. I said it's not a who decides. It's the standard. Is when you do a thing, is that going to cause unnecessary harm or suffering? For example, right? That's the standard. It's not who you ask. It doesn't matter who you ask. Everybody understands. Yes, this is going to to hurt this other person. There's no need to do that. Yeah, that's what decides it. Reason, not authority.
আচ্ছা, উনি বলছে যে এখানে কোনো মানুষ ডিসাইড করে না, এখানে ওই যে কারণে আপনার ক্ষতিটা হচ্ছে, হ্যাঁ, আপনি কারো ক্ষতি করছেন কিনা, এইটা যে কারণে হচ্ছে ওইটাই হলো স্ট্যান্ডার্ড। তো এটা হলো মানদণ্ড যে আমি কাউকে ক্ষতি করছি কিনা। এখন কে বলছে সেটা ইম্পর্টেন্ট না, বা কে এটাকে নির্ধারণ করছে সেটাও ইম্পর্টেন্ট না। নির্ধারণ যে কারণটা হচ্ছে নির্ধারিত সেটা হচ্ছে মেইন, সেটা লজিক্যাল কিনা বা সেটা আসলে গ্রহণযোগ্য কিনা সেটা হচ্ছে আমাদের দেখতে হবে। হ্যাঁ, কে বলেছে ইম্পর্টেন্ট না।
হ্যাঁ, বুঝতে পারছি বিষয়টা। প্রশ্ন আমি কি এখন প্রশ্ন করব?
আমরা মুভ অন করব। আপনার হয়তো লাস্ট একটা প্রশ্ন করতে পারেন, পরে আমরা we are going to move on to a different topic.
ঠিক আছে, এখানে যে কোশ্চেনটা যে আপনারা যে কথা বলতেছেন যে কাউকে ক্ষতি করা যাবে না, এই বিষয়ে সকল নাস্তিকরা আসলে একমত কিনা, এবং এই জিনিসটা কি ওনার এটা বাস্তব, মানে ওনার ব্যক্তিগত নৈতিকতা কিনা, বা ওনার এই কথাটা পৃথিবীর প্রত্যেকটা নাস্তিক কেন একমত হয়ে সেটা মানবে, এবং সেটা হচ্ছে কেউ যদি না মানতে চায় সেক্ষেত্রে তার সেই অধিকার আছে কিনা, এটা।
ওকে, সো হি আস্কস does
আমি দুইটা কোশ্চেন একসাথে হ্যালো ভাই, আমার দুইটা কোশ্চেন
এতগুলি কোশ্চেন ভাই, এটা আগে করে নেই একটা একটা করে। হ্যাঁ, একটা একটা করে নিই, তাহলে আপনি মিউটে থাকেন। ওকে, সো হিজ কোয়েশ্চেন ইজ, do all the atheists accept that it is not ethical or is not moral to hurt somebody else? Are we all in agreement? And second question is,
and I would say that atheists are universally more moral than the Christian or Muslim morality, because there's things written into the doctrines of both religions which are objectively immoral.
হ্যাঁ, তো উনি বলছে যে হ্যাঁ, পৃথিবীর সমস্ত নাস্তিকরাই ধার্মিকদের থেকে বেশি মরাল, কারণ এই যে ধর্মগুলি আসলে ইমরাল বা মরালিটি
না, ধর্মগ্রন্থে যে লেখা আছে যে ডক্ট্রিন গুলো, সেগুলো অবজেক্টিভলি ইমমরাল। উনি বলছেন যে নাস্তিকরা অন্যান্য আস্তিকদের থেকে অনেক বেশি মরাল জেনারেলি। তার কারণটা হচ্ছে এটা যে ধর্মে যে সমস্ত ডক্ট্রিন গুলো লেখা আছে সেগুলো অবজেক্টিভলি ইমমরাল। এখানে অবজেক্টিভলি ইমমরাল, হোয়াট ডাজ হি মিন টু সে দ্যাট? উনি কি বলতে চাইছেন অবজেক্টিভলি ইমমরাল বলতে? উনি বলতে চাইছেন এইগুলোকে অবজেক্টিভলি প্রমাণ করা যায় যে এগুলো ক্ষতিকর এবং এগুলো ইমমরাল। এই জিনিসটাকে অবজেক্টিভলি আমরা তথ্য প্রমাণ দিয়ে প্রমাণ করতে পারি।
Right, we can objectively verify and objectively with evidence prove that these are inferior or wrong compared to secular morality. এবং কেউ যদি his second part of the question was, if someone does not agree or does not follow these rules, what are the consequences? So they have their consequence, like they will die, and
that's the other failure of religious morality. The only thing that religious morality can claim, the only basis for morality they have, is do what you're told simply because you were told to, and if you do something you were told not to do, you will be punished. That's not morality, but that's what every religious person thinks morality is. Morality evolved because we are a social species. We depend on each other. We're one of the few species that actually does depend on one another. So we depend on society, and society, conversely, depends on us to cohabitate productively. And what that means is that the people who always stand by their word, the people who can be relied upon, the people who have empathy and generosity and charity, these are the people that are revered within society. So as an issue of population mechanics, these are the ones in primitive societies, they're more favored. They will produce the most children. They'll have the best living situation, the highest standard or status in their group. Whereas people who are selfish and well, let's say that, and they're apathetic, whether they have a dysfunctional motor mirror neurons, or they have underdeveloped prefrontal lobes, or whatever their psychological problem is. Over time, those people tend to be ostracized from society, removed from the gene pool, either by being banished, imprisoned, or killed. So what you end up with over generations is people who can rely on each other being dominant in the society, and these aberrant deviants being kept to a minimum.
Right. So, সিরাজ ভাই, আপনাকে মানে যে বিষয়গুলি মানে আমাদের মরালিটি কিভাবে গড়ে উঠেছে এবং এগুলি গড়ে ওঠার কারণে সমাজে যে আমরা একটা আমাদের সমাজটাকে সুন্দর রাখার জন্য বা সিস্টেম্যাটিক রাখার জন্য, হ্যাঁ, শৃঙ্খলাবদ্ধ রাখার জন্য আমরা এগুলি মেনে চলছি এবং এগুলি গড়ে উঠেছে মানে ধীরে ধীরে ইভলিউশনের মাধ্যমে সমাজ ডেভেলপ হয়েছে, এই কথাগুলি উনি বলেছেন এবং এগুলি আমরা আমাদের লাইভে প্রচুর বলি। তো আমরা পুরা জিনিসটা, ওনার যে স্পিচটা আমি পুরাটা হয়তো আপনাকে ট্রান্সলেট করে অন্য এক সময় দিব, আজকে আর সময় আমরা নষ্ট করব না, যেহেতু মূল্যবান সময় অনেকেই দেখছেন। তো সিরাজ ভাই, আপনাকে অনেক ধন্যবাদ যুক্ত হওয়ার জন্য আজকে। ভালো থাকবেন। হ্যাঁ, তাহলে আজকে বিদায় দিচ্ছি। সরি,
আপনার কিন্তু প্রশ্নটা নিলেন না, আমার আরো অনেক প্রশ্ন ছিল তার কথার উপরে। আপনি কথা শেষ
ভাই,
করার
আপনাকে
আগে
নিয়ে তো না, আপনাকে নিয়ে তো ভাই পুরো প্রোগ্রামটা আমরা ডেডিকেট করি নাই ভাই।
আপনার কি তাহলে নির্দিষ্ট আছে যে এতগুলো প্রশ্ন করা যাবে, এতগুলো প্রশ্ন করা যাবে না?
না, এখানে
আপনি
দেখেন
একটা কাজ করবেন সিরাজি ভাই, এই জিনিসগুলো আমরা উত্তর দিতে পারবো, আপনার কোনো সমস্যা নেই। আপনি অন্য একটা সময় যখনই সময় পাবেন আপনি চলে আসবেন, আমরা ততক্ষণ কিছু গেস্টদেরকে নিয়ে যদি সময় থাকে, শুনুন কথাটা শুনুন, যদি সময় থাকে আমরা আরো কয়েকজনকে সুযোগ দিই, শেষকালে যদি সময় থাকে আপনাকে আবার যুক্ত করা হবে, কেমন? আপনি আশেপাশেই থাকুন, কেমন?
আপনাদের কি লাইভে এরকম নিয়ম ছিল নাকি আমার প্রশ্নকে আপনারা ভয় পাচ্ছেন, এরকম কিছু?
আপনার যেটা খুশি মনে হতে
এবার
পারে,
ঠিক
কোনো
মানলাম,
অসুবিধা
উনি
নেই।
যা খুশি তাই ভাবুক। হ্যাঁ,
আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে।
এবার
সত্যেন্দ্র ভাই, may I add something to this what Aron said?
Right. Sure.
Okay, sure. Okay, sure. Aron, I don't know if you are aware about this experiment or not. So, what you are talking about the evolution of morality in our society. So, there had been an experiment. So, so these experiments are with some algorithms of evolutionary game theories. So, so there are few rules in that. So, there are four groups or four different players. So, they will play either a red card or the green card. Have you heard this algorithms?
Nope, haven't heard this one.
Okay, so if all the people plays the blue, so there are two cards. So there you can play. That is why either you can play blue or green cards. So if all the people, okay, let's say green and red cards. Let's say, so if all the people plays green cards, then all the people gain 1 points. But if any one of the team member plays a red card, so and 3 are green cards, then all the 3 players who has played the green cards, they become penalized, and the person who has played the red card or the played foul, so this person get maximum benefit. So that means the goal or the Nash equilibrium should be that all the people should play the four players will play the red cards only. Okay, so to minimize that. So what they did, they asked for a competition to develop this algorithm and so that they could win, to check of which one can win. And so when they started this, they started trying to see that which one wins. And then what they did is that the lowest one, they started eliminating the one which scores the lowest. So it is kind of a selection, even though there was no descent with modification, but there was a selection process in that. So in that, I can detail it. Right now, I'm not explaining that in details. So what it found is that those survives the race who plays who factor in benefit risk analysis and who plays mostly the green cards or the mostly try to play fair or kind of a tit for tat kind of strategies. So what we found is that in the game theories, so it clearly shows how the morality within the bigger population, the larger population, evolves within a time for a cohabitation, because we try to reduce the cost of our fight and try to increase the benefit out of it. So that definitely means that there's a evolutionary game theory for that. There is a game, there is a dove and a hawk game. So I think you definitely know this. So it actually showed that this one, so this most of the people, so most of those organisms which plays the dove strategy survives the long term race, even though those people who plays the hawk strategy, that is the aggressive strategy, they may win for some time, but the dove strategy, they play together and tend to survive the race by keeping their genes within the gene pool for the longer period of time.
Yeah.
So
Are you
if you
quoting from the selfish gene? Because I remember the selfish gene talks a lot about that too. But
no, actually not. I'm not talking about from there. Actually, I was going through this gene evolution and this game theories, how it is associated with morality. Few videos and books I was going through. I'm not very sure. I'm sure that selfish gene also talks about that, definitely. But these information, this information I was talking about, this game theories and all. So these are recently I was going through some books by. So I was watching a video by this guy Veritasium, and I was watching reading few books from there. I'm talking about, but definitely it is there also in the selfish gene as well.
I'd be
Definitely, sir.
interested to see. I'd be interested to see this study if you want to share it with me.
Sure, sir. Definitely, sir. I
Thank
will.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
One
sir.
other thing I'd like to say about this, I mean, because when you're talking to religious believers, this always comes up. It's like always the first thing. It might be the only thing. It always comes up, morality. And the weird thing is that in this discussion of atheism versus theism, morality is irrelevant. It really is. Religion is a control system. It's meant to manipulate the masses. And it wants to have strict control over your most private aspects too. It's very much like 1984, like the book 1984. They want to control everything about your mind, your sexuality, all of that. So that's why they confuse it with morality. It's obedience. And Islam is the name Islam it's right there. I mean, submission, right? So you are submitting. You are being obedient to the people who have erected themselves as God's representatives, the clergy who now hold power over you and get to, collect 10% of your income. So they have great jobs without having to get a job, and they get treated as if they have wisdom when they don't. It's all a control structure. And so the believer thinks that it's all about morality when it's not.
Agreed. Definitely agreed. সত্যেন্দ্র ভাই, আপনি নতুন কোনো গেস্টকে যুক্ত করতে পারেন।
অমিত দা, আপনি কথা চালিয়ে যান।
আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে। Okay. আচ্ছা, okay. So let me ask you one question. So this irreducible complexity, when we hear about this, we would like to hear some words about this irreducible complexity from you, Aron.
Okay. Every testable claim that irreducible complexity made, or that the intelligent design proponents made about irreducible complexity, every one of those testable claims had already been refuted by science before they were exposed in a court of law. Michael Behe didn't bring up the whole list, but Kenneth Miller had already trashed all of them. So Kenneth Miller is a biologist who he literally writes the textbooks, the college textbooks in biology. And he went through all of the intelligent design's claims about irreducible complexity, disproved all of them. But that was in science. Nobody reads scientific journals. So they went to court in Kitzmiller versus Dover, and they had to expose the whole thing again. So they have Michael Behe on stage. He makes the claim, and then they present the evidence that disproves everything he said. And they disproved it so well that the judge, who is a conservative Christian Republican and not a scientist at all, understood that Behe was being dishonest. For example, in one case, Michael Behe said that science would never produce an explanation for this one particular thing. And they presented 56 books that all contained the explanation for that thing. I can go into some of the specifics if you like, but I'll wait for the questions.
Okay, sure. I will park this one. So I will definitely keep it in mind. So we would definitely like to see, and we would also like to see, the books you have written and the recent book that you have written already. So we would like to see about that also. We have a question, I think. So Socrates Dawkins, so he would like to ask you one question. Socrates, you can go ahead. Okay, so we will show about this evidences and this book. We will talk about that later. Okay, after that.
So do you want to talk about
Okay,
your
thank
book
you,
now?
Amit. Thank you, Amit.
Oh, go
না
ahead.
না আমি সেটা বলছি না সত্যের সন্ধানী ভাই আমি সেটা বলছি না আমরা আরনরা দুটো বই লিখেছেন আরনরা
Mhm.
has authored 2 books okay we would like to
Right.
know about those books okay more about that
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
Aron was going to talk about this for that some evidences he was going to share with us for that
Okay.
irreducible complexity which has been submitted in the court so that we'll see okay and but before that we would like to actually Socrates
question.
Dawkins has a question. Yes, we would like to
Okay.
take the question. Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Socrates.
Sure.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. I have a question to Aron Ra that if you have any memorable story behind you're becoming an atheist, could you share with us shortly, please?
I didn't understand everything you
Okay,
said.
let me rephrase that. A train is going by, so give me a second.
Gotcha.
All right. So yeah. So his question is, can you tell us a memorable story of your transition from, let's say, your Mormonism to atheism?
Oh, yes, certainly. Yeah, I mean, I was baptized Mormon, but I never identified as Mormon because I didn't know if I believed everything necessary to be a Mormon. I was aware that there were other religions. I didn't know anything about these other religions, so how would I know if one of them might resonate more with me once I found out about them? How do I? And I don't know that just because my parents are Mormon doesn't mean that I'm Mormon, right? I have to read the books. I have to do I agree with everything that Joseph Smith said? That's what it would require for me to be Mormon. So I never identified as Mormon. I accepted that I was Christian because Mormons believe that they're Christians. And I was Christian because I believed in Jesus. Of course, I believed in Jesus because I'd been lied to by my family. And then when I had a rebirth experience, reborn in Christ, with my best friend in high school, who later became a Southern Baptist minister and the principal of a Christian school, he was part of this rebirth experience. And so I'm floating around the house in euphoria, and it's kind of like an emotional daze. And in a moment of clarity, I asked my friend, how do I know that this feeling of elation is really the power of Jesus and not just some trick of the mind? He grabbed me by both shoulders and with a huge beaming smile and said, just keep telling yourself it's Jesus until you believe it. And that telling me to lie to myself until I believed my lie was so dishonest that the spell was broken instantly. I was no longer a Christian from that instant on.
Very good. I have a question follow-up. Like, I've seen many of your videos. You've been on several talk shows, YouTube channels. For one thing, I've seen The Atheist Experience with Matt Dillahunty.
Mm-hmm.
You were featured in that show several times. And then you have done Magic Sandwich and several others. Do you talk about what motivated you to become a public speaker in that
yes.
in that topic?
Yeah. Well, around about Y2K, I got a job in tech support where I had unlimited overtime, and I was on the internet, and so they were basically paying me to browse the net all day, every day. So I found myself, it wasn't a very demanding job, so I can have a conversation with my customer while also having a typed conversation with strangers on the web. I found myself in news groups back in the days of Usenet. They don't exist anymore, but back at the time, there were news groups that you could post to, and I found myself arguing on Talk.Origins. And the people that I was discussing with then and Talk.Origins were people that I later met in real life. And one of the things that I know is when we get into the scientists on one side, the religious people on the other, you throw out a question and you see how they both answer it. And right away you can see who's got the goods and who's full of shit. But one of the things that alarmed me was that one of the people that I was talking to, or some of the people that I was talking to, were Reconstructionists under the Chalcedon Institute from R.J. Rushdoony. These are extreme religious fundamentalists. They were bragging to me that their ministers had been on the phone with other ministers across the states to tell their congregations to vote as a block in order to position judges and senators and school board members and so forth so that they would put evangelical Christians in every, from dog catcher on up, in every part of state and federal government. They were bragging that they had already positioned all these people, and that what was going to happen, this was their 5-year plan, was that they were going to have all these religious people in all the top seats of power, and then there was going to be something like Kitzmiller versus Dover. They thought the judge would rule the other way, and then evolution would be banned, and then everything would be established as religion, and they would overturn our constitutional republic and erect a autocratic theocracy that would enforce Levitical law. And Levitical law means everything in Leviticus. Basically, you kill everyone who works on weekends. Death penalty for everything.
Yeah, that reminds me of, it sounds awful lot like Sharia law.
Yeah, exactly. But it's actually worse.
Worse, yes.
Levitical law would be worse than Sharia, to be sure. But it is very much like that. So that was what motivated me, that I needed to do something. I didn't know what, but I needed to do something. And so I started just a grassroots thing of arguing with these people online, and until I built up my YouTube channel, and I'm trying to reach people as much as I can that way, by addressing all of the common arguments that we always hear. And that's where the foundational falsehoods of creationism came from, because I get the same arguments all the time. Well, evolution is just a theory. There's no transitional species. There's no beneficial mutations. All these kinds of lies. And that's why I would say when we talk about the two books, the one of those books is just a coffee table book. The We Are All Apes, that's just a coffee table book. The book that has the bulk, that's the foundational falsehoods of creationism. If you're going to get one of my books, get that one. And it also includes Michael Behe's arguments with the court and how everything that he said about irreducible complexity was refuted. That's all in there too.
So we can now transition to the question that Dr. Amit had for your book, question about your book, and also the evidences. So Dr. Amit can further clarify that question, if you would.
No, we would like to first hear about this one, this Michael Behe's, how it has been refuted. We would like to know about that first. I definitely think that would be interesting, and then we will talk about Aron Ra's book.
Okay. Michael Behe on stand said one of the claims that he made was that removing any part of the bacterial flagellum would prevent it from acting as a rotary motor. And the court, the opinion of the court, said Professor Behe excludes by definition the possibility that a precursor to the bacterial flagellum functioned not as a rotary motor, but in some other way, for example, as a secretory system, or as a secretory system, which is what it is. And so they showed an evolutionary pathway for how it can go from a secretory system to this rotary motor. And all the arguments for irreducible complexity are that it needs all of these things at once or it can't function. Well, maybe it can't function in that way, but there is a way that it does function that leads to an evolutionary pathway. Behe also said that science will never find an evolutionary explanation for the immune system. And that's when he was presented with 58 peer-reviewed publications, 9 books, and several immunology textbook chapters about the evolution of the immune system. However, he simply insisted that it was not sufficient evidence and that it was not good enough. So he dismissed all those books, that stack of books, unread. He just said they couldn't exist. They showed them that they do exist, and without reading them, he said it's impossible, it's not good enough. So he's never going to change his mind. He's never going to admit when he's wrong. That's what faith means. Never admit when you're always wrong. Behe also said each and every element of the complex cascade of enzymes and cofactors must be in place for blood clotting to work. Again, the judge said that the evolution of complex molecular systems can occur in several ways. Natural selection can bring together parts of a system for one function at one time, and then at a later time recombine those parts with other systems or components to produce a system that has a different function. The complex biochemical cascade resulting in blood clotting has been explained in this fashion. Moreover, cross-examination revealed that Professor Behe's redefinition of the blood clotting system was likely designed to avoid peer-reviewed scientific evidence that falsifies his argument, as it was not a scientifically warranted definition. So it's common for believers to use straw men to misrepresent the data however they can, because all that matters is not the truth. All that matters is how you make believe. And the opinion of the court finally was, we find, therefore, that Professor Behe's claim for irreducible complexity has been refuted in peer-reviewed research papers and has been rejected by the scientific community at large. And then one other thing that the judge said was his frustration that all of these people who would so proudly tout their religious convictions would time and again lie to conceal their agenda, to cover up the plan of intelligent design.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So, Dr. Amit, do you have a follow-up for complexity?
No, I don't have any follow-up question. This one, so we can go
Dr.
ahead with we can. Sure.
I have a question to Aron Ra, if you allow me.
No, you're not pronouncing you're butchering the name, but anyway, go ahead.
It's all right. It's all right.
Okay, Mr. Aron Ra, in reality, in my surroundings, I find that almost all of my known persons who are religious persons don't have any idea about what are there in their religious books. And personally, I was successful to make some of them to read their textbooks, and then they lost their interest in their religion. And I think if most of the people try to know what are they are written in their textbook, I think they will lose their interest. What do you think about it?
Well, it depends on where the interest lies to begin with. Fundamentally, it really does all come down to whether you want to understand or whether you want to make believe. So people will want to believe things so badly, they will knowingly lie to themselves, as my friend did. You know, keep lying to yourself until you believe the lie. There are people who think that way, and unfortunately, there's a lot of them. So when you disprove somebody, and you disprove them publicly, they will never admit, they will never concede that error. Will go on and repeat the same thing that they now know has already been disproved. They keep repeating it anyway. That's the whole trick with lying. Don't ever admit you were wrong. It's like with our former president Donald Trump still saying that the election was rigged. Years later, running for president again, still says it. Just never admit. It doesn't matter how it was proven wrong. Never admit it.
Yeah, you said something along these lines that they will believe the contrary in the face of evidence, as it happens with evolution. So no matter how much evidence is presented, they will still believe in the creation.
So in one case, this one evangelist told me that evolution was being taught as one thing turning into a fundamentally different thing. And I'm like, no, it isn't. Show me it. Not one professor, not one textbook, not one lecture. Show me. You say that evolution is being taught that way. Show me. Because here are the textbooks. I showed 4 textbooks that I happen to still have from college. I showed all these links for other universities. They all say the same definition. They are not giving his definition. Show me an academic university textbook or lecture or anything that says what you say. Show me. And if you can't, it's because you're wrong. It's because you're lying. And so it's this. This is what they're really teaching, not what you say they're teaching. He couldn't show it because it doesn't exist. But he wouldn't admit that all these definitions were consistent, that all these different universities were giving the same definition. He said that all of that was a conspiratorial lie, when really, secretly, without saying so, they're really teaching it his way. How the fuck can they be teaching it his way if they never say it?
And what it like the intelligent design people or fine-tuning people who want their theories to be taught alongside with science. What do you say about that?
They don't have anything to teach. My first debate that I ever had was with somebody that wanted to teach the strengths and weaknesses of evolution, by which he meant teach the weaknesses of evolution, and by which he meant he wanted to teach false information, right? Just stuff they made up about evolution. And then they including the God of the Gaps thing, where he says anything that he doesn't know the scientific explanation for, he'll assume there is no scientific explanation, and therefore anything that science hasn't explained becomes evidence for God. We tried to go over the strengths and weaknesses, and I tried to explain to him some of the strengths. If he didn't know about any of them, he wasn't going to teach them. As a matter of fact, he admitted in writing in the debate, he said that he knew that there were transitional species in the fossil record, but he wanted to teach students that there were none, because he said it was important that they believe there are none. So he admitted that he wants to knowingly lie to students to control what they believe. That's what religion is all about.
Right. Okay, we have a couple of more people. They're queued up for, eagerly waiting to ask you some questions. So I'll go to Joy. Go ahead, Joy.
সত্তর ভাই, আমি এমনি ডিউটিতে যাব, যদি একটু আমাকে চান্স দিতেন আর কি।
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So greeting Aron Ra sir for joining our live. So, sir, I have a question that I am also ex-Christian and I was in seminary. So when I was in seminary, that time we got in our textbook about the evolution theory. So when I asked to my rector, that time he told me that, yeah, Christians also believe the evolution theory, but so that time when I ask again, but Bible is not telling like this. Bible telling us about the Adam, Eve, like that. So that time our rector told me that the Christians are not following in Bible Old Testament, the book of Genesis, chapter 1 to 15. Is that true that you are also facing like that? If you explain, please.
Every Christian group wants to speak for all Christianity, so that they'll say that, we are the true Christians and those other people are not really Christians. Those Mormons, they're not Christian. The Jehovah's Witnesses are not Christians. Catholics are Mary worshiping pagans. We are the only real Christians. And so whatever that group believes is what they say all Christians believe. Here in Texas, there's a hell of a lot of Christians who will tell you that real Christians don't believe in evolution. Real Christians read Genesis and start from Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and everything's absolute truth from then on. Yeah. Nobody speaks for all Christians. Nobody can even tell me who is a Christian and who isn't.
It's sort of like a fallacy of no true Scotsman.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So Joy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me our time. Hello,
sure, go ahead.
Aron Ra. How are you? I think you are well. I have a question to you about the contest of your country and my country. Did you get attacked by the believer you were?
I couldn't make that out. I'm sorry.
Have you ever been attacked by anyone? So believers or like
no.
Is your rivals and all?
No.
No, you get that question a lot, right? On our
yeah,
you got that same question last time, right?
Because,
so why
because I asked you this.
Yeah, one second. Let me get some clarification on like freedom of speech and like I know that freedom of religion comes under like freedom of expression or First Amendment or Bill of Rights. in your constitution. So is it different? Like, I know in my country we couldn't exercise our freedom, so we couldn't go and say Muhammad is a prick, for example. We can't do that, but you can go and you can say whatever you want and never be
let me tell you how I figured that out. I was
Okay.
I was in Dubai, and there was a bunch of Arabs that were sitting in this outdoor restaurant with us, and that they had never met an atheist before, and so they wanted to have that most basic discussion of you've never met an atheist, right? With the standard beginner questions. And so this guy sits down with me, and he starts asking me this, starts talking to me, and I say, okay, here's 5 ways that we know the Quran is wrong. And because I said that sentence, my host grabbed me by the shoulder, says, we got to go. 1 minute later, we're in the car and down the road.
Yep. And also,
that's people don't understand what free speech means. Free speech means that free speech does not mean that the university has to give you a platform. No, free speech means that you said something and you didn't get arrested.
Right.
Absolutely.
And my second question is about that. Which stage of your race you became non-believer?
Which stage of life?
How did I become a non-believer?
Yes.
I think,
okay.
At what stage in your life? I think that's what he said.
Well, as for a lot of people, it's incremental. For one thing, when I was about 12, I'd been given all kinds of nonsense pseudoscience books, about Nazca lines and Bigfoot and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it was in the 1970s, and the culture was very different. And I noticed that only certain books would talk about the pseudoscience stuff that I so enjoyed at that time. But if I go to science books, I go to history books, there's no mention whatsoever of these extraterrestrial visits, or Noah's flood, or whatever. There's just science books, history books, nothing in it like that. And there's these other books that talk about that. So I thought I could just read the stuff that I know will reaffirm what I believe. And as soon as I thought that, as soon as that thought occurred in my head, I realized how dishonest that is. If I only want to read what I want to believe and not what's actually true, and I don't even want to evaluate to find out what's actually true, I just want to believe what I want to believe, that's fundamentally dishonest. That's the difference between people who embrace religion and will never be reasoned out of it, and people who understand science. Do you care what the truth is? If somebody were to show you that what you believe is wrong, would you change your mind? And for me, it's not even that tough. Is there any truth to it? You don't have to prove it wrong. You don't have to prove it wrong. If I find that the evidence that I had for believing it in the first place wasn't as good as I thought it was, I already don't believe it anymore.
Okay. So my third question is, did you ask anybody of us in this stage why you are hiding your identity and face?
No, he's
I
not.
wasn't hiding my identity.
No.
No,
He is not talking about that. He is saying that we have not switched on our camera. Have you ever asked or wanted to know why? Were you ever curious about that?
Yeah, I mean, I did a panel for 3.5 years where we were reading the Quran. I'm reading the Quran with a panel of people from all over the world, and most of them are from Muslim countries. I had 7 or 8 people, and most of them had to keep their cameras off because most of them were still living it. They hadn't moved to Canada or whatever where it's safe. They were still in their home country. They had to keep their identities secret. They had to keep their faces off screen. They had to use fake names because they'd be hunted down, arrested, beaten, killed, whatever, simply for what they... That's the huge immorality with religion. Religion wants to punish you not over whether you're a good or bad person, because they don't even know how to tell that. They don't have a way to know whether something is moral or not. What did God say? What did the imam say? What did the priests say? That's all they know. And the priests all disagree with each other, right? It's okay to believe in evolution. No, evolution is a sin from hell. Yeah, they don't agree. So they don't have an objective morality at all. All you can do is ask for an opinion. I forgot where I was going with that.
I think like expressing our thoughts and just talking about.
Oh yes, I remember where I was going with that. Here's the problem is you're not judged over whether you're moral or immoral. You're not judged over whether you're good or bad. In religion, you are judged over what or whether you believe. As if believing or not believing is a moral issue. The Quran is explicit on this.
Yep.
Believers do good things. Doing good things means believing. And unbelievers do evil things. And doing evil things means not believing. That's it.
Yep.
Buy the bullshit I'm selling you without question. That's it.
Yes, and anybody who opposes that is a bad person, right? Becomes automatically devil.
Hunt them down and kill them.
Yep. All right.
Okay.
And the Bible says much the same thing. The Bible says to kill the infidel too.
Yes, but nobody follow that except Muslims and fundamentalists. Or,
and somebody else mentioned earlier that nobody reads their holy books. That's true.
Yep. That's true. If they did, they would already know that it's full of nonsense. Anyway, I'll go to the next.
It might have been you. Whoever told me that, they said that somebody was talking a little bit ago and said that they were an ex-Christian. And before I even need to ask how they became an ex-Christian, they said they went to seminary. I already know.
There you go. All right. So I'll go to the next person.
Yes.
Yes.
My next question is: I think every religion is burden to me. It's a big burden to me. Why I love to carry this for my whole life, and there are two ways in the Quran. If you don't believe, I will cut down your head, and other one is you will have to must believe. So, what are your opinion about this?
Well, the Bible says the same thing, that you must kill the unbeliever on the word of 2 or 3 witnesses. So what do you have as far as if you understand evolution and you understand population dynamics over many generations, then you have a society where anytime anybody says, "Oh, I don't believe that," they kill them. Well, then it's not very long before everybody in that society is a credulous gullah believer. I'll buy anything you sell me.
Okay, thank you so much. I got my questions answered, and thank you so much for giving my time.
Okay, thank you so much. Amar stage tech to Khali korte hocche. We're going to talk about your book a little bit, Aron. What is the we know that you have 2 books out. You briefly told us what they contain.
Yeah, I'm working on a third one. Third one, which is going to be it's going to take me some time to piece. It's going to take me about a year over schedule on this one, but it's on the history of Genesis, essentially, where all these tropes and fables and such come from.
So yeah, give us a little sneak peek on that.
No, I can't.
Oh, okay, all right, that's fine. Okay,
yeah,
so
I shouldn't have even said what I said.
I have one question regarding that, Aron. So then my question is that: are you going to talk about the origin of life, like the biochemical origin of life, how it happened? Little brief in that book.
No, in the book in my last book I did a little bit, but I didn't really know a lot when I did that book. I've since been keeping a list of scientific papers that cover different aspects of the origin of life. I've got dozens of peer-reviewed studies to show different developmental stages that are not, well, they're sequential, but they're not necessarily in a series. There's different chemical environments, different processes. And so what believers want to say is, have we ever created life in a lab? Well, technically, yes, we did, but that has nothing to do with this. We're trying to figure out how life developed on its own, and it wouldn't be the way that we did it. And it wouldn't be all at once. It wouldn't be like, what they want is like a bag of powder that you pour into a machine to turn on the mixer and it spits out a rabbit. You know, that's
Yes, exactly.
yeah, and so
Yes.
life is very complicated. And so the explanation for that is going to be very complicated. It's not going to be the super simplest answer. A magic invisible man said abracadabra. That's not going to be the answer.
Yes, exactly. Definitely. Earlier days when we did not know about this, we did not have any idea about the microscopic cells and all these things, or we did not have any idea about this Krebs cycles or in these biochemical molecules. We used to think that life is just a vital force. So it is just a something like a magic. But now we definitely know that it is not, and we definitely know that what life it actually is. It is a biochemical reaction, nothing else than that. So we can see different. Yes, right.
But
And
here's a question
sure.
for both of you. I'll ask Aaron first, or Aaron, excuse me. So Aaron, what are your thoughts on life evolving on a different planet and then sent to Earth? So is there any truth to that?
Well,
that theory?
if we ever find, and I'm hoping we do, but if we ever find life on another planet, the first thing it's going to reveal to us is that it's going to be so much different than anything we've ever experienced that it's going to stunt our imaginations. When you ask people to devise a new and original life form, if you go back to the ancient Greeks, for example, they tried to come up with new and original monsters, and they were just pieces of existing animals stuck together. You know, a manticore, a griffin. What is it? It's a cat with, or it's a lion with eagle's wings or some such shit. That's the way that's how their imagination worked. Everything that you look at for movies, for example, when we try to come up with a new and original alien monster, it's always an existing animal that we've already seen. We just doctor it up a bit, right? Put features from different animals together. Godzilla is like that. For example, you start with a lizard, and you give it a cat's nose, maybe little tiny ears, maybe fangs, things like that. That's what they did. So when you get into marine biology and they start seeing how life is at the bottom of the sea, stunningly different than anything anybody could imagine. So the most alien life form anyone could think of was cephalopods. So some alien science fiction started using cephalopods. It's the most alien thing we could think of. But the thing is that if life emerged on another planet, they would not be us with green skin and pointed ears. They would be bizarrely different.
But,
I mean,
yeah, but
they'd
some
be so
people,
different.
people say, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but some people, I've just had a thought that some people, they say that humans are from a different planet. So
yeah, some people are stupid.
Good one, definitely good one.
Right. So
okay, so I would like to share. I would like to
ahead.
share my thoughts on this. Okay, so before going over anywhere, so I would recommend everyone to read a book. The name of the book is Solaris. So it was written by I forgot the name, but the last name is Lem, Lem. It was written in 1961. So it is about a book, so about a planet, exoplanet, so where there is a sea, and that whole sea is living. You can read this book. There is a movie on this also. It's a pretty nice movie. What happens and
I
all.
think
I
I've
will not.
seen it.
You have seen it, yeah. Yes. But the book and movies.
The planet was Darwin 4, and it involved a sea strider.
Yes, correct. Yes. The book and the movie, they have a completely different idea and the message they have. So Solaris, this one. Yes, Stanislaw Lem. Yes, exactly. Yes, over here someone has mentioned already. Yes, the movie and the book are different. But what I'm trying to say is that whenever we think about life, so we talk about the life as we see on Earth. We see that there is a DNA and it is made up of 4 nucleotides, like that we only see. And that's why when NASA is thinking about searching the life outside of the planet, the extraterrestrial life, they really had to give it a thought that how they will identify the life. And that's why they mentioned their working hypothesis or the working definition. They mentioned that it is a system which is self-propagatory, which can self-sustainable, and it follows the Darwinian evolution. Definitely, we know that it is evolution does not only follow Darwinian evolution. There is genetic drift and there is a genetic flow also, but it is the most fundamental, the fundamental cause of the diversity that we see. So
It
when
would be
us human,
reasonable. It would be reasonable to expect that alien life would fit all of the 7 criteria that we teach as what constitutes life. Um, I would think that in most cases that it would be based on the cell. All of that seems expected, that maybe it would follow those laws but still be bizarrely different. One interesting thing, though, is that DNA is not the only type of genetic material.
exactly,
So,
yes.
yeah, so it could have RNA. I forget what the other one is. There's another one that isn't used by any sort of organism right now, but there is another type of amino acid that could be genetic.
Yes, definitely. And so it definitely, if it is self-propagatory, then we can call it as a life. If if the biochemical reaction is going on, we can call it as a life. So for what is my take is that definitely someone like a human being you may not be able to see, or someone like someone like an elephant or the plants you may not be able to see. But it is not unlikely to find something which we really can live by our definition, at least how we know.
But
Definitely. Yes,
Dr.
definitely.
Amit,
Yes.
um,
Yes, sure.
okay, are we? My question is, could we have an agreement on what life or definition of life is? Because we can see many different forms of life. Like take virus for example. Uh, can we call it a life or living?
Yeah,
Or
life. It doesn't have homeostasis.
yep. So, uh, what is actually like life? What is life actually? Can you
So
define it?
for me, it is really difficult to define what life is for me. Okay, that is my opinion. Because earlier, when we did not know, we used to see that okay, someone is growing, someone is giving rise, reproducing, or something like that. But when we went deeper into the molecular level or the biochemical level, when we start seeing all the biochemical reactions, suppose the Krebs cycle is going on, electron transport chains are going on, there are here and there a hell lot of thousands, millions, and billions of biochemical reactions are going on simultaneously, then the line between living and dead becomes living or non-living. The line becomes thinner and thinner and thinner. So that's why when you see that the that same iron, it is there in your junkyard. Whenever it comes into a system, it becomes a part of the hemoglobin. It start carrying your oxygen or carbon dioxide and becomes a living system, right? So definitely there is a very thin line to call it as a
So,
living system or non-living system. So it is
right.
definitely difficult to define it. Okay, but
What
definitely
is
we can
your
come with a minimum characteristics. Okay, we can say that that's why we define life in respect
mhm.
to characteristic, that these characteristic, as Aaron was talking about, that 7 characteristics or 8 characteristics or one fundamental characteristic, we will take and define it as a life when we search for life extraterrestrial.
So
Aaron, please go ahead.
what is Aaron's take on it?
On the definition of life, I
Yep.
think that it would probably fit everything that we use as a criteria now. That it would grow and reproduce. That it would probably would have to be based on a cell, because mathematically it really wouldn't work any other way. But I'm open to be surprised, and I'm expecting that if we find life on an exoplanet, it's going to challenge what we had originally said. There's always going to be an extenuating circumstances, something out there that we didn't expect. And I would be excited to say, I wish they would find it in my lifetime, but I know better than that.
No, it could happen. I mean,
But Shweta bhai, I would like to clarify one thing over here. The
go
cell,
ahead.
what he means actually, it does not mean the cell that we see, the tiny small cell. What he means is that so the environment of the inside and the outside is different. There is a homeostasis, right, Aaron?
Yes, and that all life is based on the cell, cell theory. So you can have a single cell that can live for a long time. You can have a single cell that's capable of a great deal of things, but or you can have multi-cell where you have the entire life form, it still breaks down to the cells. I don't see a way that you could have a life form that wouldn't be based on the cell, as you said, a different internal than external chemical environment and maintains homeostasis.
Okay. I have one more person who just joined to ask you a question. JJ.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And then I'll have to go shortly after that because
Oh, okay.
time.
All right. So we're so grateful that you came here, talk to us out of your busy schedule, and we hope that you'll be back again for another session. We'd definitely love that. Okay, so I'll take this question from JJ. Go ahead.
Hello, am I audible? Hello, Shatru.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay,
please go ahead.
Thank you, Aron Ra, for coming us and giving your precious time, sharing your time with us. So I do have some question actually. One is related with the evolution, and another is about the religion. So first about the evolution, the way you are saying that the origin of life, we are talking about for the last few minutes about the origin of life. So that's then but I don't have any problem with the evolution, but sometimes I think that's the way it is discussed, like all we quote unquote all we originate from the same homeland in South Africa. So do you think you have any kind of difficulties understanding about this statement, that actually we may have originated in around the same time in different parts of the world?
I don't understand how what does we mean in different
we mean
parts
so
of the world?
all women, that it is said that all we human, that's the came
humans.
Humans came from the same homeland in South Africa, where the life evolved from the same place in somewhere in South Africa.
So you accept that all humanity is monophyletic, right? That they all come down to there's a single common ancestor for all of humanity, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Now, what I would say, as far as when you get into the larger category, we don't have a genetic ancestor-descendant relationship with all things, when all microbes, because there's a thing that goes on with microbial single-celled organisms called horizontal gene transfer, so that they can literally collide with each other and exchange DNA. They can exchange attributes. So if you can borrow it from your neighbor rather than inherit from your family, that gets a little muddy as far as doing a genetic phylogeny. When it gets into like eukaryotes, for example, there's certainly a single common ancestor for all of eukarya, but between eukaryotes and prokaryotes, not necessarily. So it's a little muddy to try to say that there's a single cell that produced all life, because they're borrowing from each other. And somebody mentioned viruses earlier, and whether we can call them alive. Viruses may come from multiple origins. Viruses, because some of them have DNA, some of them just have RNA, and they are very dramatically different. What we call viruses might actually be different collectives, where we can have something that is, say, a protobiont cell, that's something that's not quite alive yet. These are the descendants of the ancestors of all life, or they could be subsequently dysfunctional former organisms that have like fallen by the wayside and become dependent on other cells to survive. So you can have multiple points of origin for things like viruses and also for protobionts. And so the origin of bacteria may not necessarily be the same as and not a genetic, not ancestor descendant as eukaryotes, but at some point you have a eukaryote cell envelop a pair of bacterial cells, and then that becomes a mitochondria, and then from basically then on, it's monophyletic, one common ancestor.
Okay, but now my question was like the way it is described in literature, that we perhaps all the primary form of life evolved in somewhere in South Africa. But
that's humanity.
That is talking about the human race, or not human race, humans. Yeah, sure, they are talking about in Africa.
Yeah, in Africa, but so
not necessarily South Africa either, but more more like a Kenya area.
Kenya area or Botswana somehow is like that, but
Yeah.
but why we cannot accept this idea that's the basically perhaps we have equally evolved in different parts of the world around the same time?
Because we have genetic mapping, and so we can now look at the genome. There's certain patterns of similarity. It's not just how similar they are, it's the patterns of similarity. There are genetic markers in every human culture or deme that identifies whether they're from Spain, whether they're from Thailand, whether they're from India. And so there's ways of tracing that. And then when you get all the combined markers, you can trace those too. And so it ultimately, everybody pans down to the African continent. Everybody's ancestors come from Africa. There was a time there was some people in China that were positing that that their ancestors did not come from Africa, that their ancestors were actually directly descended from Neanderthals or from Homo longi. Not Homo neanderthalensis, but Homo longi, and but then when they get a fossil that has DNA, which sometimes happens, they realize that there's no match there, and so they are not descended from Homo longi. They had to concede that they're from Africa like everyone else.
But the mechanism that involved, for example, the works behind the origination of human or cell or other organism in Africa, the same mechanism. Why we don't expect that the same mechanism could have been could existed in other parts of the world? Since we have
I do accept that the mechanism exists everywhere in the world.
But Aron has actually answered that question, that how do we know it is from the genetic pattern? So definitely it might have been that there may be 2 or more waves from the Africa, and it is also that wherever the local population where they evolved over there, definitely like the Neanderthals, Java man, like Homo habilis, they evolved locally, geographically they might have evolved. There are variations, we know. But the Homo sapiens, when we talk about technically Homo sapiens, we can pinpoint from the the pattern, we can pinpoint they have originated from Africa somewhere, as Aron was talking about, somewhere near Kenya and all that area. So even the sentinels in the Andaman Nicobar sentinels, they are also Homo sapiens, and they also have originated from there. The old, like the prime or Paleolithic time, so during that old Paleolithic time, they have been separated from us. So they evolved separately, and the remaining rest they have evolved separately. So that we know because we have this genetic mapping in hand. So we have that that proof in hand. Earlier there was a different idea that all these races and all, like these Americans have evolved separately, Europeans have evolved separately, then they came and make us civilized, but it is actually not like that. So this one we have a concrete proof of that.
Okay, it's okay. Leave it there. So I have that second question about the religion thing. So as you know that as you have discussed earlier, that the Christianity also has kind of evil culture in the back. So, but they have over time they have changed. But nowadays the way the Christianity is seen in many parts of the world, but despite the same origin, do you ever think that Islam also someday will evolve in that same way, so that the way Christianity or Christian in general, the people they behave with other people, so from the other backgrounds, so someday the Muslim, particularly the religion Islam, will also treat the same way as the Christianity treat the people? Did you get a?
I did not. I'm sorry.
No, what
I
he
also
means
did
is
not
that
get the question. I also did not get the question.
I'll try to explain it the way I understood. What he means is that it seems like Christianity went through a lot of reforms, And is it possible that the same thing will happen to Islam as far as the
Oh,
because
well, hasn't it already?
no, is it possible that we might reform our religion to make it fit with the current world,
Well, yeah,
civilized world?
Islam probably it has a. I would think it would have an easier time of that than Christianity does. Christianity just had a longer time of facing, because you had the printing press was in Europe. You had a lot of the science that started out in Europe because there was the printing press, so they had mass books and all of that. I understand that the Arab world had actually invented our number system, and that you had a fine basis for science there too. You didn't have the cultural embrace of it that Europe was kind of forced to do. So they had a lot of leading scientists that were coming out that when religion began to relax their grip, then you suddenly had scientists coming forward that are contradicting what the religion is, because all religion is false. So Christianity starts making allowances till it gets to the point where, like the Catholics now, it's like the Pope is trying to retrofit Catholicism to fit with the evolving social norms, right? It says things like, we're start promoting that you can use birth control, or that abortions are allowed, or that atheists can get into heaven. They'll start saying all that because they want to preserve their belief system, so that they have their little cultural thing and they still have their clergy and all like that. Just let us keep this. I really like this. Let me keep this. That's where it is. Islam has already started making provisions like this, because you have two ways to go. You can either become extreme religious lunatics, in which case the religion is going to die out very quickly in conflict with everyone else, or you start making accommodations where you get along with everyone else, and then you can preserve a little bit longer.
Absolutely. All right, Aron, this has been awesome. We had so much fun, and I hope that you'll be back again with us. So we'll keep in touch. And
I
also
appreciate
thanks to everybody who was with us tonight and who were in the comments from Facebook and other places. So have a great rest of your day, Aron. And if you have any last words for us, please end it. We'll end it with that.
I don't like the idea of giving last words, but I don't have a problem coming back at some other time.
All right, that sounds
kindly.
good. All right, so we'll see you next time, and have a great rest of your day. And we'll say goodbye from our Truth Finder channel.
And it was really nice.
Can I ask a question to Aron Ra?
What is it?
Do you have time for one?
Yeah, go ahead. What is it?
Okay, thank you for allowing me. So my question is to Aron Ra. I am an atheist. I am living in US. So how can I connect with the North American atheist organization? Can I get a link about that?
Yeah, social media is the best way to get hooked up. There's a lot more atheist groups than a lot of people know. I live in Dallas. We have the DFW Core, which is the Coalition of Reason. That is 24 different atheist, freethinkers, Satanist groups that meet up regularly. And when you're connected with one of them, you're connected with all of them. You can look up on you just Google like atheist or free thought or humanist or whatever, which is your preference, and then the name of the city that you're in, or the closest major metroplex, and you should be able to find something. And if you happen to be in Philadelphia, well, then I'll be up there at the end of this month. Well, excuse me, at the end of March, I'll be up there.
Thank you so much. I search on the online media of social media. I found many names, but I can rely on them. So I want a reliable organization who is actually a atheist organization. Not
okay. You can also contact atheist.org. They have directors listed for every state, and they have their email addresses, so you can contact them. And the state directors or the regional directors will be able to connect you to the local free thought groups.
Thank you so much. I have another question. Can I ask you?
Okay, quick.
Okay. I see on the US currency there is written printed on God we believe. So this message for the believer, not for the not believer. So we are carrying that kind of currency. It's disgracing us. So
Yes.
how can we remove that kind of message from the US currency?
Yeah, grassroots activism. When I started out as an atheist activist around Y2K, they were only like 5% of 5% of Americans would identify as atheist. As in the course of the activism going on over the years with the internet, with all these other people doing the same sort of thing, we noticed, or I remember when we eclipsed Jews, so there were more atheists than there were Jews in the U.S. And then years later, there were more atheists than there were Catholics in the U.S. And now there are more, as of just a few months ago, there are more atheists in the U.S. now, or more non-believing, non-religious, than there are Protestants. So we're one of the largest demographics now in just 20 years or 25 years.
All right. So yeah, then this trend, I think it's going on, and it's going to be the same way. I hope in my country, and a lot of people who are coming out and they're admitting that they don't believe it.
Is your country India?
No, Bangladesh.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
I've seen some disturbing things recently, from India, and of course with Bangladesh. I've interviewed Bangladesh refugees who were fleeing, because I can't just come out and say, "Hey, I don't believe that." In some parts of the country, people are gonna mob you.
Yep.
And that's yeah. So that's bad.
No, we have had some pretty drastic things happen, like people burned even. So that's horrible, terrible things happening due to.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having a conversation about that topic, about how religion in India and Bangladesh, how religion reacts to secularists and all that. Would you contact me after the show via email?
Yeah, I'll talk in the
Facebook, whatever.
Yes, stick around.
Let's set up that conversation, because I'd like to have it.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, but I do have to go now.
Okay, I will contact you separately and then talk about that whenever you have time. So
please, thank you.
All right. So thanks a lot, everybody, for being here. And Aron Ra, once again, 3 cheers for you. And until next time, have a great rest of your day, and we'll say goodbye.
Good.